Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. South Park has been doing social commentary for a long time, nearly 25 years, and obviously a show that started in the late 90s is going to change and evolve a lot over time. Not everything the creators said or believed in the early days of South Park is going to carry through their lives or for the duration of the show. And I mean, that should be true for all of us, honestly. Especially South Park, which is a show partially designed to offend and primarily designed to make us laugh. Back in 2006, South Park absolutely lambasted former Vice President Al Gore in the infamous episode ManBearPig, which can basically be summed up as the funniest denial of global warming of all time. And while it genuinely is one of my favorite episodes from a comedic standpoint, it's hard to deny that this wasn't a problematic stance on climate change. But in 2018, South Park did something really interesting. They changed their mind. And they showcased that change of heart in a two-part episode in only the way South Park can. So today let's talk about the time South Park said,
"Sorry."
But before we get started, let's talk about today's video sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build your online presence, run your business, or make a personal website. It's seriously so user-friendly. I threw this cool page together pretty quickly, and there are so many different customization options. My website looks professional, and it matches the aesthetic of my brand and YouTube channel, highlighting some of my favorite video essays I've worked on, as well as some of the recent productions I've worked on professionally. It's even got links to my work and contact info. I seriously can't express how easy Squarespace is to use. Head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to push the website public, use my link, squarespace.com/Johnny2Cellos, to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Before we dive into the Al Gore controversy, let's talk a bit about how Matt Stone and Trey Parker look back on their work. The show has been on for 25 years. Obviously, the audience and the world has changed a lot over that time, and thusly, so has South Park. In the early days of the show, there was plenty of language or characterizations that you just wouldn't see on the show these days. While the show has had plenty to say from a social commentary perspective, it doesn't mean that the show or its creators continue to believe these things. Each episode is basically an imprint of how they were feeling and what they believed at the time. Matt Stone talked about this a bit at the South Park 20th anniversary panel.
I mean, there are sometimes I look back at an old show and a line or a position and some social commentary, and you're like, I don't know. Like, I've grown since that, but that's what it is. That's what we thought then. So it's sort of a record of our whole thought, process with the good and the bad the whole way through.
And this is true for all of us, right? We all change and evolve our views over time as we learn more and see the world differently. The difference is that we don't have a long-running TV show that can remind us exactly how we felt in 1999. Matt even went on to say that sometimes how he felt changed through making an episode about certain subjects.
And we go into stuff all the time, into shows all the time, where I'm definitely coming and go, I'm pissed off about this or whatever, and through doing the show, I'm like, well, maybe I was wrong about that. 6 days later.
I can actually relate to this myself. I put out a lot of videos on this channel, obviously, and sometimes days or even hours after posting a new video, I might rewatch it and start to rethink something I said or feel like I maybe missed the mark. But with that in mind, let's talk about how South Park tackled the climate crisis back in 2006 with the episode ManBearPig. If you aren't familiar, former Vice President Al Gore produced a documentary released in May 2006 about global climate change, attempting to draw attention to the growing crisis. About 1 month before the documentary released, South Park dropped the episode ManBearPig.
Well, I'm here to tell you now, ManBearPig is very real, and he most certainly exists.
The episode's message was clear. Al Gore is preaching about an imaginary problem that could supposedly kill us all, but also couldn't possibly be real. Funny? Definitely. Harmful? Also definitely. But like I said, this was a potentially harmful approach to talking about climate change. And it was a pretty stark contrast to how other shows were handling the issue. In particular, Futurama, a show that made a point to have a pro-environmentalist episode in just about every season. In fact, an animated sequence from Futurama was actually used in An Inconvenient Truth, as it so concisely illustrated how climate change was occurring.
Pretty soon, Earth is chock full of sunbeams. They're rotting corpses heating our atmosphere.
The episode came and went, and despite its message, many still consider it to be one of the funniest the show has ever done. They even sort of doubled down on the idea a year later in the Imagination Land trilogy, in which they visit a place where imaginary creatures created by man actually exist, and sure enough, ManBearPig was there, basically restating that he's imaginary. But obviously, since 2006, lots more research into climate change has been conducted. While there are definitely still deniers, I think a lot of the people who were skeptical have come around. and that actually includes Matt Stone and Trey Parker. In 2018, they followed up the ManBearPig story with an episode called Time to Get Cereal, and they did this in probably the most South Park way ever. That's right, they revealed that canonically, ManBearPig is real, basically stating, we were wrong and this is a real problem. Rather than just saying it, they made a full 2-part story about the issue, taking back what they had previously inferred, and even infusing some interesting new social commentary into the issues and politics surrounding climate change and climate change denial.
Okay, ManBearPig is real. What are we gonna do about it now, huh? What are we gonna do that's gonna make any difference now, Susan?
Personally, I cannot express how much I loved this approach, and truthfully, I would love to see the show use similar methods to reassess some of the other things they've said over the course of the series. You don't need to just sit back and say, sorry, which really won't make much of a difference. Instead, they drew as much attention to the issue as they could through the show. It's a fun way to show that you've changed, and a significantly more effective way as well. And you know who else thought so? Al Gore.
And they all say, oh, we're so sorry, Al Gore. ManBearPig is real. I thought it was a hell of a statement by South Park, and I appreciated it a lot.
But I think that brings up something else that's interesting about South Park and how it's perceived. There are so many folks who feel the show is too centrist or too apathetic, that it's actually doing harm by not taking a firm stand on things. But I actually think that's misguided. I mean, look at ManBearPig. We have an actual situation where the show took a firm stance on something. No question about it. And that stance was probably more harmful than any centrist rhetoric you might hear about the show. That's not to say the show is best when it's taking a middle ground stance, but I think one of the things that actually is interesting about South Park is how they portray arguments from many sides, because that's actually true to life. I don't think it's a problem to show another side's argument. Just because the show is showing many sides of an issue doesn't mean it's advocating for every side. There's inherent drama and conflict in these current events, and the show uses that conflict to tell its stories and find comedy. Matt Stone talked a bit about this as well at that 20th anniversary panel.
But I think we do better when we deal with the emotions within it instead of trying to come up with a solution.
Right.
You know, so if like we're arguing about it in the writer's room, we just put that argument in 2 characters. You know, whatever the nut is of the argument, we put it in 2 characters' mouths and try to find the comedy in that.
And I think he's right. Finding the emotion that lines these conflicts is where the show excels, and telling stories that draw out the character drama through current events is what works best. I see a lot of people trying to pin centrism in general on South Park of all things, and I gotta say, I think that's kind of ridiculous. This is a cartoon on cable TV. It hasn't created an army of apathetic people. That isn't to say the show can't or shouldn't use its platform for positive change, or hasn't used its platform irresponsibly in the past. That's what this whole video is about. But the idea that we have South Park to blame for apathy, that's a stretch in my opinion. But what do you think? How do you feel about South Park rethinking its stance on Al Gore and climate change? Are you willing to help in the fight against ManBearPig? Let me know below in the comments, and of course, stay tuned for more. Peace.
ManBearPig is real.
Johnny!
Cellos!